Well, it's not just the NBA that has a draft happening this week, or the PWHL for that matter. That's right, the MNHL getting in on the action as well. Let's talk about who the Seattle Kraken might take at number 8.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Seattle hockey fans, welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are bringing you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken. I am a contributor at CBS Sports, and I am accredited for the Milano Cortina Olympics in Italy coming up in the wintertime, if you can even believe it. Want to let you know today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com today. On today's episode, we're going to talk about 3 potential prospects. Now, we're going to utilize our Locked On NHL Prospect experts because they've done their final mock draft leading into Friday, which will be round 1. Well, for all intents and purposes, that's when the Seattle Kraken draft is starting. If we look actually at what we have with regard to the draft, it's going to be several days. This is the first NHL draft where you will not have representation from each respective team on the draft floor, so to speak. So day 1, we are expecting to have, the first couple of rounds. And the Seattle Kraken once again have the 8th overall pick. And then we'll get through the rest of the draft on Saturday. The Seattle Kraken will have media availability in Seattle. And so we'll talk about that as that comes to pass over the weekend. And of course, ready for next week in particular. Might have a few things over the weekend. I'm actually moving, like for real. All my stuff has to be out of my apartment this weekend. So if we don't get to it over the weekend, we will for sure have something for you next week. I'm really excited for someone that I covered in women's hockey as a part of the LA Kings organization. They are hosting this draft. First kind of draft again, where it's a little different. The team personnel will be in market, but there's still a lot of activities. And Blake Bolden is a name that you will see everywhere if you look at the schedule of events, especially the community events. So proud of Blake. Excited for her experience to host effectively this draft. But let's talk about what we're expecting from the Seattle Kraken. So when I looked at some experts, including our own Sebastian over at Locked On NHL Prospects, of course, we looked at Elite Prospects, we looked at NHL.com, The Athletic, etc. There seemed to be consensus around 3 names. And actually, the third one might be a little bit of a nod to one of our viewers and listeners. I pulled the third name from a comment from Kevin Segura, 6087, who commented on the Locked On Kraken YouTube page. But I wanted to include, a fan pick, so to speak, or someone from our community, from the Locked On podcast community. So there's 2 names, and we're going to talk about a third that I've been hearing. On tomorrow's episode of Locked On Kraken, I'm going to focus on 3 centermen, because the 3 picks that we have here, if you're watching on YouTube, you can tell none of them are centermen. I do hope the Seattle Kraken buck the trend of picking centers in the first round, and we can talk a little bit about that. But on Thursday's episode, we'll break down the centerman if we go back to the usual position that the Seattle Kraken tend to draft early on. We'll talk about that. And then, all bets are off for Friday, man. We'll just recap a few things that we're hearing. There's a lot going on Friday. So it's going to be a time. But I want to focus for this episode on if the Seattle Kraken were to take a winger, This is the top winger that is projected to fall around the time the Seattle Kraken are picking. So it's not that there aren't other wingers, it's just that this is a player that a lot of experts believe is within reach for the Seattle Kraken. And this is the true pick for our experts over at Locked On NHL Prospects. Then I'm going to talk about if we were to pick someone at right D, so a defenseman, and then at left D, another defenseman. And I'm going to be honest, I would love for the Kraken to pick a defenseman. But either way, we're getting in these first projections, we're getting a player that is over 6 foot, with exception of only one. They're all over 200 pounds or nearly 200. Like I'll give you the all of the metrics and whatnot. I am excited to hear what you think. We got a little bit later into the draft, uh, projections and predictions. Also, some of that is by nature of some things happening with the Locked On NHL channel. But again, we can talk about that as we get deeper into the week, especially on Friday. We'll let you know what to expect, and all of that good stuff. So, again, Sebastian from our Locked On NHL Prospects did, I believe it was the first 50 picks. So, very interesting to hear from, again, our folks, what they're thinking here. And the first pick again is going to be someone that I've heard from, not who our who does he have? I said a who.
The eighth, and wrapping up this first segment, we had the Seattle.
So this pick is going to be the true pick of the Locked On NHL Prospects. I have seen this pick again in some of the other roundups, whether it's the Athletic / the New York Times. I wrote for both of those places, so it's still wild to me that they're now effectively the same. Anyway, I digress. This is the true pick for Locked On NHL Prospects. It's also one of the picks over at NHL.com. And let's take it over to Sebastian to hear who we at the Locked On NHL channel, but specifically Locked On NHL Prospects, thinks the Seattle Kraken will take at number 8.
On to eighth, and wrapping up this first segment, we had the Seattle Kraken selecting Porter Martone of the Brampton Steelheads, a very physical player who was able to explode in violence, but still has to learn to use his physicality to create those smaller advantages. A very dynamic player when he wants to be, but sometimes the skill gets ahead of him. I think he's a guy that things will have to kind of come together with this player, but he has easily some of the highest upside of any player in this entire draft class. If he hits, this is a player that could be your Tage Thompson style of first line winger, has all the skill in the world, moves quite well for his frame, brings a level of violence, and is just one of the more dynamic playmakers and goal scorers. He doesn't have the same level shot of a Tage Thompson, but he has better playmaking ability. So I think he'd be a really nice fit in Seattle and a great pairing for guys like Matty Beniers or Shane Wright to develop alongside on that wing. Berkeley Catton would also fit in beautifully in that kind of setup. I think there's a lot of interesting possibilities for the forward core if the Seattle Kraken were able to land Porter Martone.
So there you go, Porter Martone. And you heard Sebastian talk about why he thinks this is a good pick. Seems like not a raw talent right now is not going to necessarily fit in right away, and we don't necessarily need that. I mean, look at what we are doing, with Shane Wright and Berkeley Catton. But if we select a winger, again, Sebastian from Locked On NHL Prospects thinks that we should go with Porter Martone. But he is not the only one. If we head over to NHL.com, so you have Mike Morial alongside Adam Kilm Adam Kilm Adam Kimmelman. So Mike Morial and Adam Kimmelman picked, uh, s- together and have an article. And so for Kimmelman, Porter Martone, similar reason and rationale. Um, since the Seattle Kraken, I'm paraphrasing here, but Kimmelman is saying that since the Seattle Kraken have built a strong prospect core through the middle, it would be a good time for them to start supporting some of that young talent by finding talent on the wing. And this is, quote, Martone brings a physical offensive game that's been compared to Ottawa Senators captain Brady Tkachuk. So let me stop there. Now, I do think Brady Tkachuk crosses several lines. But if we think about what we've been talking about the last handful of days, this stood out to me because if this is an organization under Jen Bottrell's brother, Jason, somewhat tongue in cheek. If we look at what Bottrell's trying to do for the Seattle Kraken and make them tougher, right? We heard from Greg Wyshynski, or I paraphrased what Greg Wyshynski said on Seattle Sports Radio a few days ago. Then if this is the comp of Brady Tkachuk, I mean, yeah, I could get with that. So my notes are over here. So in Martone, you're looking at someone who's 6'3", 204 pounds, has the maturity to be a captain. That's something that Kimmelman mentions here at 18 years old. Has good decision making with the puck, according to Kimmelman, can use his body to hold off defenders. Staying strong on the puck is such I'm going to say this, I forget who it was who commented this, but apparently our guy Grant Fuhr for the Firebirds says bugaboo. That is a bugaboo of mine, that the Seattle Kraken are not strong enough on the puck. I feel like I've done the Sheryl Crow joke before, right? We have to, are you strong enough? And most of the time, the answer is no for the Kraken. So if he can use his body to hold off defenders, he has a high IQ that stands out. He has worked to improve skating, but I mean, we have a skating coach on the Seattle Kraken coaching staff. He's already proven he could blend well with NHL players while playing with Canada at the 2025 IIHF World Championships. So there you go. Now, if we look at what Morial said. Mike Morial actually has Porter going one slot ahead to the Boston Bruins. This is what he had to say. Right-handed power forward, proven scoring touch. I like to hear that. Led Brampton in the OHL with 61 assists, 98 points, and 29 power play points. I like that a lot. Someone that can help on special teams sounds good to me. Had 7 goals, 22 assists in those 29 power play points. Again, serving as captain. And then they go on to talk about Mike Morial, goes on to talk about why that's a good pick for Boston. I'm not going to read that because we're not Boston. We're Seattle. But I like what we're hearing from some of the insiders here. So that's the pick that we have in at Locked On NHL Prospects. Of course, let me know in the chat right now as we get ready for our first break. Do you like this pick? And is there someone else perhaps that you want to see the Seattle Kraken take at number 8? Coming up next, I'm going to give you the pick that I think out of this first crop, I personally like the best, and I'll tell you why. That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by a new sponsor that we have in Rougiette. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something that goes beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in about 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. With consent, always. Always. So head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnNHL and use code LockedOnNHL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/Locked On NHL and use promo code Locked On NHL to get 20% to get 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugied website for full safety information. Thank you, Locked On Kraken listeners, for making us a part of your daily destination, your first listen, your midday listen, your listen towards the end of the night while you're cooking dinner. I actually still gotta go cook dinner, but I'm actually excited. I'm excited to cook dinner. I have a really great meal planned, so it's gonna be a good time. Anyway, let's get back. So, all right, Porter Martone. Solid, right? What did I say here? 6'3", 204 pounds. Well, what's better than 6'3", 204 on your right wing? I think maybe 6'6", 218 on your right D. Let's hear what Sebastian has to say about who I think is probably the best pick, if he's available, for the Seattle Kraken.
I think a great fit, if he's even available at this stage. He may very well go higher than this range of the draft on the day of. But Radim Mrtka, the 6'6" right shot defenseman who skates really well, defends excellently, and showed a lot of offensive blossoming towards the end of the campaign with the Seattle Thunderbirds, was playing like 30 minutes a night, was almost a point a game after making the switch over from playing pro hockey in Czechia. And I think that his combination of defensive awareness, sense of timing, and mobility with that range and physicality is a really, really alluring thing, especially if you're a Buffalo Sabres team that needs some more reinforcements as right shots, natural right shots in your defensive core to pair with your first overall left shot defenseman in Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin. We know that Bowen Byram is on the trade market. I think going for a right shot defenseman to replace him in a couple of years' time would be a really wise decision for the Sabres, who've been going with forwards in the first round here as of late. I think it might be the year where they switch gears a little bit, but at 10th over.
I mean, basically what he said is why I think also the Seattle Kraken should take a chance. Take a chance on me. Radim Mrtka, right defense, 6'6", 218. You know I love Team Czechia if you listen to my hockey content, even outside of Locked On Kraken. I just really like what the Czech national team seem to be doing throughout their development process. I watch a lot of women's Team Czechia. We've seen what Team Czechia on the youth side and the men's side can do. Just a reminder, if we go back to the original mock, Roger McQueen is actually the pick originally that our Locked On NHL Prospects guys talked about. And we're gonna go to McQueen again. We have a trio of centers on tomorrow, Thursday's episode, that I want to talk about. I think you can accurately guess and estimate that McQueen will be among them. Why do I like this pick? Well, I mean, you heard Sebastian talk about it. Someone who defends well, who skates well, and is getting better offensively. To me, I want solid defense. I want players that instinctively, intuitively know how to play defense on the Seattle Kraken team. And if they're showing promise on the offensive side as a defenseman, even better. Good size, already has good defensive, again, IQ, skill, instincts, probably can get even bigger, even tougher on the puck. Yes, sign me up. This sounds like a player that I absolutely would want to see the Seattle Kraken take. Let's go to some of the experts. Now, this is the true pick that Mike Morial has in his most recent mock draft. The right-handed shot born in the Czech Republic is hard to miss. Mrtka 6'6", 218 has great hockey sense, competitiveness, and is considered a solid two-way defenseman with plenty of upside. The Western Hockey League rookie only started playing competitive hockey 3 years ago. That's wild to me and is a top 10 prospect. That's wild to me. Selected by Seattle in the second round of the 2024 CHL import draft, 35 points, 3 goals, 32 assists in 43 games. Second on Seattle, again coming from Seattle. We talked about that. So that's another upside. Not the reason that I like this pick, but it doesn't hurt, I don't think. Second on Seattle in assists, despite not making his season debut until November 29th. 32 assists from November 29th to the end of the regular season. Beginning the season playing professionally in the Czech Republic. The Kraken need, this is a quote here, the Kraken need a blue chip defenseman prospect in the pipeline. Boom. There you go. There you have it. Now, Kimmelman has Mrtka at 11. So I just want to Pittsburgh. Now, talks about the Penguins having a thin prospect base. Mrtka stands out as the second best defenseman in this year's draft class as a giant-sized right shot puck-moving defenseman who is an outstanding skater just starting to grow into his frame. When Mrtka fills out physically, he is projected to be a number one defenseman who can quarterback a power play and use his length to be a dominant defensive player. Yeah, if you're an everydayer, if you're an OGer, you know I want all of that. I want all of that because there are some baked in guarantees right here. I mean, nothing is guaranteed. You know, we're talking about young guys. Nothing is guaranteed. The size, the knack for defense, and the upside to me, chef's freaking kiss. I really like Mrtka for the Seattle Kraken. But again, let me know in the comments, what do you think about this pick for the Seattle Kraken at number 8? Coming up, we will round it out with, yes, another defenseman. Who could it be? Well, hang tight. I will tell you on this episode of Locked On Kraken. I genuinely want to thank you for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination, your first listen of the day, midday listen, last listen of the day. Whenever you listen, we appreciate it. I especially love when you comment. We have people commenting on Blue Sky. We have people commenting in the chat, or excuse me, on YouTube. We're not live, so there's no live chat, but in the chat on YouTube, under the when you watch the video, I have people that come up to me, that talk to me when I'm out in the wild, so to speak. I'm in headquarters right now, new headquarters, again, moving in this weekend. Hopefully it's not a scorcher. It's gonna be hot. It's been hot, so I've been trying to do little pieces. Anyway, not about me. Let's talk about the Seattle Kraken. Again, McQueen, I just showed you the original mock draft. Roger McQueen, we'll talk about some centermen that the Seattle Kraken might be interested in. There has been some movement, as you can see, even with the picks from Sebastian in the most recent mock draft. We have seen even other experts saying that there is a lot of potential for things to move around here. But as we can see with this graphic here, I really do like that Draft 25 Los Angeles logo. I'm feeling it. I might need to get me some swag. Get me some swag, when it's discounted though. I was there. I was not. I might have to get to a draft again one of these days. But the Seattle Kraken have the number 8 pick. And I think it's so interesting also some of the teams that are ahead of us, like Nashville. We talked about Boston a little bit, Philadelphia, Buffalo right behind us, Anaheim at 10, the Penguins, who we talked about when I talked a little bit about Mrtka. So I think it's very interesting because there's some similarities in what we need. Chicago, Utah, and there's been movement. There was even a trade earlier today, right? With Evander Kane moving, to Vancouver, is it? I believe, from Edmonton. So still, still in the Pacific Division. I don't know that it matters too much to us, but let's go to Sebastian, who is a player that potentially could go at right D. Well, actually, before we go to Sebastian, um, this was again Kevin Segura um, talking about this potential pick, and that is one Jackson Smith. You can see in the early projections for the uh, for the Locked On NHL Prospects, Smith projected by our experts to go 11 to the Penguins. And now let's go over to what Sebastian has to say about Jackson Smith, and is he still at 11?
At 15th overall, the Vancouver Canucks snag a potential faller on draft day in Jackson Smith, smooth skating 6'4" left shot defenseman from the WHL and the Tri City Americans, a guy who just has so much upside, especially in terms of how much further he can raise his offensive ceiling and overall how his physicality and rush defending could be suffocating at the professional level. I think he'd be a wonderful complement to a Quinn Hughes in terms of locking down that left side long term. He'd be a really, really great complement as well to a player like Tom Verlander that could really open up some more of the offensive game with Jackson Smith, which should be very exciting. I think he'd be a great fit in Vancouver if he slips to this rank.
And so there you have it. I said, and I've been listening to what Sebastian and Hadi have been saying. A lot of potential. A lot of people are saying for folks to slip, for folks to you know, get go higher than projected a couple of months ago. And Jackson Smith, one of the guys that might fall to 15. Now, if we look at the NHL crew, they have him in back-to-back picks. Now, it is actually Morial, who stuck with what our guys originally had with Pittsburgh taking Jackson Smith. You might remember that Kimmelman has Pittsburgh taking Mrtka, who we just talked about. This is what Morial had to say, agreeing with Sebastian, good speed, movement through the neutral zone. Remember, we heard from Sebastian that he's a smooth skater. Oh, I like that. A smooth skating defenseman. Now, this is what Morial says. Good speed and movement through the neutral zone to lead the rush. Yep, I like that. 6'4", 199. I told you most of them are around 200. So he's the one that's under. 54 points, 11 goals, 43 assists. There you go. Lead that rush, baby. In 68 games. 43 assists in 68 games. So says he's a fan of Chicago defenseman Kevin Korchinski. He can run a first unit on a power play or a penalty kill. I love me a diverse prospect. Yes, give me some versatility. Can finish hits. Let's go, sandpaper. Let's go, physicality. Let's go, we're getting tough. Let's go. And take charge in transition. I love this. Listen, Kevin, my guy, Kevin. Listen, I like what we're hearing from Jackson Smith. Pittsburgh could use more young depth on the back end. We could say that about the Seattle Kraken. What did Kimmelman say about Jackson Smith? Projects that he will also go to Pittsburgh with the 12 pick, though, that they got from the Rangers via Vancouver. Talks a little bit about what Pittsburgh may have done elsewhere. The Penguins could opt for a big left shot defenseman. So a left shot D, there you go. Skates well enough to be a one-man breakout and can make a smart first pass out of the zone. So these two are agreeing. 18 years old, solid offensive skills, physical in the defensive zone, and can play against other teams' top lines. He'll close a drive away. So he's going to be at Penn State next year. And so Kimmelman's saying that if he goes to Pittsburgh, he'll be not too far away from Penn State. I've made that drive from Penn State to Pittsburgh because anyway, that's not a, anyway, doesn't matter. I could get with this, Kevin Segura, 6087. Thank you for that. If y'all have other prospects that you want to hear about, I feel like there was someone else I was supposed to talk about a while ago. I apologize. I might have just lost track of the comment. So please, 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 if you're listening to this on audio, if you're watching on YouTube, I don't have any twitchy eyes. I'm not completely exhausted today or stuffy like I was the other day. So hopefully I look kind of human today. Wearing my fancy hat. I love this hat. Got it here in Tulsa. Love it. I love a burnt orange moment, you know. Anyway, not the point. The point is Jackson Smith. I like either one of these 3 picks. I'd be completely fine with either one of these 3 picks. And what I like the most about them is that they're not centermen. However, I have to prepare myself because I wanted us to take a D-man last year. You know, if you're an everydayer, I was gutted that we did not take a D with our pick. We're going to talk about centermen on the next episode of Locked On Kraken because, I mean, you know, the Seattle Kraken, we have a type. We have a type, babes. And let's talk about it. However, how much does that type hold true now that we have a new GM and a new head coach and a new president or a first ever president? How much are things going to change? I wanted to start with changing things up because I do think there's a new sheriff in town, right? And I like these. I really and I'd be so happy with any of these picks because of the P&V, the grit, the sandpaper, the moxie, the being smart on the puck, being able to lead from the back. I like this. I like these picks. But we're going to talk about some centermen. We're going to talk about some centermen as well because I think definitely some talent here. I just don't know if it's the right position for the Seattle Kraken given what we already have in the prospect pool, but you let me know. We've still got 2 more days. We're going to hear more from Sebastian, more from other experts around the NHL media circuit. So let me know in the comments if you particularly want to hear what Sebastian has to say about a prospect. If you let me know today or tomorrow, I can cut that up and make sure we talk about it just in case they're not already on my list. That's all for today's episode. I'm going to go home. Again, I have a great dinner planned. I've been watching Scandal for the first time ever. Never watched it when it was, when it aired the first time. Having a lot of feels. Can't wait to have my meal. Can't wait to sit down, relax a little bit, and then get you ready for the draft coming up. First round happening on Friday. Be kind to yourself. That's what I'm doing. A special dinner tonight. Be kind to others. And we hold fast, we stay true, and loud and proud, we say always, let's go Kraken. I, Erica L. Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken, will catch you on the next episode. Be well and peace out, everybody. Live well and prosper. That's something, right? Either way, I'll catch you on the next one. Later days.